Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No light, no sound, no air, no sky, no ground beneath your feet, no stars scattered across the heavens, nothing to see, nothing to touch, nothing to hear, just silence. But here is the question that has haunted humanity for thousands of years. Have you ever stopped, in the middle of a busy day, looked up at the sky and asked yourself, where did all of this come from? The stars that burn billions of miles away, the oceans that stretch beyond what your eyes can see, the mountains that stand so tall they disappear into the clouds, the very air filling your lungs right now as you watch this video. Where did it all begin? Scientists have searched for answers, philosophers have debated it for centuries, but long before any of them ever asked the question, there was a story. The oldest story ever written, the most powerful account of beginnings ever recorded. A story that doesn't start with a scientist in a laboratory or a philosopher in a library. It starts with a single, eternal, all-powerful God and a word. Just one word. And that word changed everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is that story. And trust me, you are going to want to hear every single word of it. In the beginning, the earth was without form, empty, dark, and completely void. The Bible says the deep waters covered everything, and over those waters something was moving, gently, quietly, purposefully. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Just imagine that for a moment. The Creator of all things, present before anything even existed. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't uncertain. He knew exactly what he was about to do. And then he spoke. "Let there be light." And just like that, there was light. Not the light of a lamp or a candle, not the glow of a screen. This was the first light in the history of existence, born from nothing but the voice of God. Think about that. He didn't use tools. He didn't need materials. He simply spoke, and the darkness that had ruled over everything shattered. God looked at the light, and he saw that it was good. Then he did something remarkable. He separated the light from the darkness, gave them each a name. The light he called day, the darkness he called night. And just like that, the very first evening passed, the very first morning came. Day one was complete. One word from God changed the entire universe. No army, no machine, no formula, just his voice. And if that doesn't make you stop and think about how powerful our God truly is, just wait, because he was only getting started. Day one was done. And what a day it was! Light had been born from nothing but the voice of God. The darkness had been pushed back, and for the first time in the history of existence, there was something where there had once been nothing. But God wasn't finished, not even close. On the second day, God spoke again. And when God speaks, things happen. God commanded an expanse to form right in the middle of the waters, a vast open space stretching in every direction. And as he spoke those words, something incredible began to happen. The waters separated. Waters below, waters above, and between them a space opened up, wide, breathtaking, endless. We know it today as the sky. But on that second day, it was brand new, fresh from the voice of God, the very first atmosphere, the very first heavens stretching above the earth. Have you ever laid on your back in the grass and just stared up at the sky? Watched the clouds drift slowly by, seen the blue stretch so far that your eyes couldn't find where it ended? Felt something deep inside you, something you couldn't quite put into words, just looking up. That feeling you get, that sense of smallness and wonder and something bigger than yourself, that is the sky that God made on day 2, and He named it Heaven. Now, you might wonder, why does this matter? It matters because without that expanse, without that carefully designed space between the waters, life as we know it would be impossible. The atmosphere God created on that second day does things that scientists still marvel at today. It filters the heat of the sun. It holds the air we breathe. It protects the earth like a blanket wrapped around a sleeping child. God didn't just make something beautiful on day 2. He made something necessary. He was building a home, layer by layer, word by word, with precision and care and a love that we are only beginning to understand. The waters below settled beneath the new sky. The waters above rested gently above it. And between them, a world was beginning to take shape. God looked at what He had made, and the evening came, and the morning followed. Day 2 was complete. The sky was in place, the waters were separated, and the earth was beginning to look less like emptiness and more like a home. But something was still missing. The waters still covered everything below. There was no land, no ground to stand on, no place for life to take root and grow. But God already knew what was coming next. And on the third day, the earth was about to burst into something extraordinary. 2 days. 2 extraordinary days had passed. Light had been born. The sky had been stretched into place. And yet, if you looked down from that brand new heaven above, all you would see was water. Water in every direction, as far as the eye could see, deep, dark, covering everything beneath it like a blanket that had never been lifted. There was no shore to stand on, no mountain rising in the distance, no valley, no hill, no patch of ground anywhere on the face of the earth. Just the deep. But God had a plan. He always has a plan. And on the third day, He spoke to the waters. God commanded the waters under the sky to gather into one place, and the waters obeyed. Can you imagine that moment? Billions of tons of water moving, shifting, pulling back from places they had covered since the very beginning, and as they moved, something appeared. Dry land. For the first time in the history of the world, there was ground. Solid, real,
rising up from beneath the waters like something that had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. Mountains began to form, valleys opened up, plains stretched wide. The earth took shape before the very eyes of heaven. And God named it. The dry ground he called earth, the gathered waters he called seas. And God looked at what he had made, and he saw that it was good. But God wasn't finished with day 3, not yet, because a world of land and sea was still a world without life. The ground was bare, the mountains were empty, nothing grew, nothing moved, nothing bloomed. It was beautiful, but it was silent. And so God spoke again. He commanded the earth to bring forth vegetation, plants bearing seeds, trees producing fruit, every kind of green living thing bursting up from the ground at the sound of his voice. And the earth exploded into life. Everywhere you looked, color. Deep greens and bright yellows, rich reds and soft purples, flowers that had never been seen before opening for the very first time, trees stretching their branches wide as if reaching up to thank the one who made them. And every plant, every tree, every flower carried something extraordinary inside it, a seed. God designed it so that everything would reproduce after its own kind. An apple tree would make more apple trees, a rose would make more roses, a field of wheat would spread and multiply and fill the earth. He wasn't just creating a garden for that one moment. He was designing a system that would keep creating long after that third day was over. God looked at everything he had made on that third day, the land rising proudly from the seas, the green earth bursting with color and life and possibility. And he saw that it was good. The evening came, the morning followed. Day 3 was complete. In just 3 days, God had filled the darkness with light, stretched a sky above the earth, raised land from the sea, and covered it all in the most breathtaking garden the universe had ever seen. But the sky above was still dark at night. The seas were still empty. The land had life, but no creatures to walk across it. God was far from done. And what was coming next would light up the entire universe.
Stop for a moment. Think about what had already been made. Light, sky, land, seas, plants and trees and flowers and fruit. 3 days of creation already behind us, and the earth was beginning to look like something extraordinary. But here is something that might surprise you. Through all of that, through every plant that pushed up through the soil, through every wave that rolled across the new seas, through every tree that stretched its branches wide, there was still no sun. No moon hanging in the night sky, no stars scattered across the heavens. The light that had filled the earth since day 1 had no source that you could point to, no burning star at the center of the sky, no glowing orb rising in the morning and setting in the evening. Just light, existing because God said so. But on the 4th day, God was about to change that. God spoke into the expanse of the sky. He called for lights, not just any lights, 2 great lights. The sun, the greater light,
created to rule the day, to govern the hours of light, to pour warmth across the land that God had raised from the waters, to feed the plants he had spoken into existence just one day before, to light the sky with a fire so powerful, so enormous, so breathtakingly beautiful, that even today, after thousands of years of human history, we still cannot look directly at it. And then, as the day gave way to evening, God placed the second great light in the sky. The moon, the lesser light, created to rule the night, to cast its quiet glow over the sleeping earth, to pull the tides of the great seas God had gathered, to give light in the darkness without overwhelming it.
There is something about moonlight that no other light quite matches. Something soft and ancient about it. Something that makes you stop and breathe and feel like the world is still and safe and held. God designed that feeling. He put it there on purpose. But God wasn't finished with the sky just yet. Because after the sun and after the moon, He made the stars. Billions of them, scattered across the heavens like grains of sand thrown by the hand of God, each one burning, each one placed, each one known. Scientists tell us there are more stars in the observable universe than there are grains of sand on every beach and desert on the entire earth combined. And God made every single one of them. Not randomly, not carelessly, but with intention, with purpose, with the same voice that had called light into being just 4 days before. And He gave them a purpose. The sun, the moon, the stars, they were not just beautiful decorations hung across the sky for us to admire. They were designed to serve, to mark the seasons, to count the days, to signal the years, to guide travelers crossing deserts and sailors crossing oceans. Long before clocks were invented, long before calendars were printed, God had already written time itself across the face of the sky. Every sunrise telling you a new day has begun. Every full moon marking the passage of another month. Every constellation returning to its place in the sky to tell you another season has arrived. God built the most perfect calendar and hung it above our heads. God looked up at the sky He had filled, the blazing sun, the glowing moon, the billions upon billions of stars burning across the darkness, and He saw that it was good. The evening came, the morning followed. Day 4 was complete. The earth now had light by day and light by night. It had a calendar written in the stars. It had warmth from the sun and gentleness from the moon. Everything was being prepared. Everything was being set in place with a care and a precision that no accident, no explosion, no random event could ever produce. The sky was full. The land was alive. The seas were vast and deep. But they were still empty. And on the 5th day, God was about to fill them. 4 days, 4 extraordinary days of creation already behind us. And what a 4 days it had been. Light had pierced the darkness. The sky had been stretched into place. Land had risen from the seas. The earth had exploded into green, and the heavens above had been filled with the sun and the moon and more stars than any human mind could ever count.
The stage was set. The world was beautiful, ordered, purposeful, every piece placed exactly where God intended it to be. But something was missing. The seas were deep, but nothing moved beneath the surface. The skies were wide, but nothing crossed them. The oceans stretched from one end of the earth to the other, and they were completely silent. But God saw the emptiness, and on the fifth day, he decided to fill it. God spoke into the waters. He commanded them to teem, to swarm, to burst with living creatures of every kind, and the oceans woke up. Fish of every kind, every color, every size, moving together through the water in perfect formation. Creatures so small you could hold 1,000 in the palm of your hand, and creatures so enormous that the ocean itself seemed to shift when they moved. The great sea creatures. The Bible specifically mentions them. The great whales, the leviathans of the deep. Creatures so large and so powerful that even today, standing on the deck of a ship and watching one breach the surface, takes your breath away. And God made them. Every single one, from the tiniest shrimp threading through a coral reef to the blue whale stretching longer than 3 school buses lined end to end. He made them all. But God wasn't finished with day 5, because while the oceans were coming alive below, the skies above were still waiting. God spoke again, and this time he filled the sky. Birds of every kind, filling the sky from one horizon to the other, swooping and soaring and diving and gliding, each one different, each one remarkable, each one carrying the fingerprint of the God who made it. Have you ever watched a flock of starlings move together across the evening sky? Thousands of them turning and twisting as one, like a living, breathing ribbon of shadow against the clouds. Scientists call it a murmuration. God just calls it Tuesday. And then God did something he had never done before, something that sets this moment apart from every other act of creation up to this point. He blessed them. The first blessing in all of creation, not spoken over the light, not spoken over the sky or the land or the seas or the plants, but spoken over living creatures, over beings that moved and breathed and felt. God looked at the fish filling his oceans and the birds crossing his skies, and he blessed them. He said, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters of the seas, let the birds increase across the earth." From the very beginning, life was meant to grow, to spread, to multiply, to fill every corner of the world God had made with more life, more color, more wonder. He didn't just make one fish and one bird and call it done. He made thousands, and then he told them to make thousands more. That is the kind of God we serve, extravagant, generous, overflowing with life and creativity and love. God looked at everything he had filled, the oceans alive from the surface to the deepest place, the skies crossed by wings of every kind, a world that had been silent and empty just days before, now full of life, full of sound, full of wonder. And God saw that it was good. The evening came, the morning followed. Day 5 was complete. The seas were alive, the skies were full, the earth was becoming something beyond beautiful. But the greatest act of creation, the one that would change everything, was still to come. And on the 6th day, God would make something unlike anything else he had ever made, something that carried his own image.
5 days. 5 breathtaking days of creation. And the earth was no longer the dark, empty, formless void it had been in the beginning. It was alive. It was full. It was beautiful beyond anything words could fully capture. But God wasn't finished. Not yet. Because everything he had made up to this point, the light, the sky, the land, the seas, the plants, the sun and moon and stars, the fish and the birds, was preparation. It was a stage being built, a home being furnished, a world being carefully, lovingly, intentionally prepared for someone. And on the 6th day, God began his greatest and most creative day of all. God spoke to the earth. He commanded it to bring forth living creatures, animals of every kind, and the land came alive. Cattle and livestock grazing across the green plains, wild beasts of every kind filling the forests and the hills, creeping things moving through the grass and the soil. Every animal, every creature, every living thing that would ever walk or crawl or climb across the face of the earth, appearing at the sound of God's voice. From the enormous elephant to the tiny beetle threading through the soil beneath your feet, from the roaring lion to the silent gecko climbing a sun-warmed rock. God made them all, each one different, each one remarkable, each one a unique expression of a creativity that has no limit and no end. And God saw that it was good. But something was coming next. Something that would make everything else God had created look like the opening act of the most important moment in the history of the universe. And then God paused. Not because he was tired, not because he was uncertain, but because what he was about to do was different. Everything else he had made, he had simply spoken into existence. Light, sky, land, stars, animals. His voice went out and things appeared. But now God spoke to himself. And what he said changed everything. Let us make man in our image. In our image. Not like the animals, not like the fish or the birds or the plants, but in the very image of God himself, carrying something inside them that nothing else in all creation would ever carry, the fingerprint of the Creator. And God reached down into the dust of the ground, the same ground he had raised from the waters on the 3rd day, the same earth that had burst into green at his command. He gathered it in his hands, and he formed a man. Shaped, sculpted, made with a care and an intention that no other act of creation had received, not spoken into existence from a distance, but formed by hand, by God himself. And then God leaned down and breathed the breath of life, straight from God into man. Not breathed into the lions, not breathed into the eagles or the whales or any other creature,
but into man, making him not just a living creature, but a living soul, connected to God in a way that nothing else in creation would ever be. Adam opened his eyes, and for the first time in the history of the world, a human being looked up at the sky God had made, breathed the air God had designed, felt the ground God had raised beneath his hands, and was alive. God placed Adam in a garden, the Garden of Eden, a place of breathtaking beauty unlike anything else on the face of the earth. Every tree that was pleasant to look at and good for food, rivers running through it, life in every direction, a home designed specifically for the man God had just made. And God gave Adam a purpose, to tend the garden, to care for it, to name the animals, to steward the world that had been made for him. And Adam walked through that garden, and every animal came to him, and he named them, each one, lion, elephant, eagle, whale, every creature God had made, passing before the man made in God's image. But as Adam looked around at the world, something became clear. For every creature, there was another like it. Lions had lions, birds had birds, every animal had its own kind beside it. But Adam had no one, and God saw it. And God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." The first time in all of creation that God had called something not good. Not because Adam was lacking, not because the garden was incomplete, but because God had designed human beings for something that no animal and no garden could ever provide: connection, companionship, someone to walk beside, someone made from the same cloth, someone to share in the life God had given. So God caused a deep sleep to fall over Adam. And while Adam slept, God reached in, and from Adam's side, from one of his ribs, God formed something new. A woman, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, not made from the dust of the ground like Adam, but made from Adam himself, tied to him from the very moment of her creation, equal in dignity, equal in worth, equal in the image of God that she carried within her. Adam woke, and when he saw her, he knew. This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. The first words ever spoken by one human being about another, and there were words of recognition, of belonging, of joy. And God blessed them, both of them, together, standing in the garden he had made for them, surrounded by the world he had spoken into existence, breathing the air he had designed, alive because he had breathed his own breath into them. He told them to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth, to have dominion over every living creature, over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, and every animal that moved across the ground. Dominion, not to destroy, not to exploit, but to steward, to care for, to rule over the earth the way God ruled over everything, with wisdom and with love and with responsibility. They were not accidents. They were not the result of time and chance and random processes. They were made, on purpose, with purpose, by a God who loved them before they ever drew their first breath. And God looked at everything he had made, not just the sixth day, but all of it, every day, every word spoken, every creature formed, every star placed, every plant grown, every ocean filled, every breath given. This time, God didn't just say it was good. He said it was very good. Very good. Two words that carry the weight of 6 days of the most extraordinary creative work the universe has ever witnessed. Two words spoken over a world that had gone from absolute darkness and emptiness to this, to life, to color, to sound, to beauty, to meaning, to love, to you. Because the story of creation is not just a story about the world. It is a story about you. You were not an accident. You were not a mistake. You were not the result of blind chance stumbling its way through billions of years of meaningless time. You were thought of, designed, wanted, made in the image of the God who spoke galaxies into existence and still took the time to breathe his own breath into human lungs. That is who you are. That is where you came from. The evening came. The morning followed. Day 6 was complete.
6 days of creation behind him, a world more beautiful and more full of life than anything that had ever existed. And yet, God set aside one more day, not to create, but to rest. And what he did on that 7th day, and why it still matters to every single one of us today, is a story all on its own. 6 days. 6 days of the most extraordinary creative work the universe had ever witnessed. From absolute nothing to this. Light born from darkness, sky stretched over the deep, land rising from the waters, plants and trees bursting into color, the sun blazing, the moon glowing, a billion stars scattered across the night, oceans teeming with life, skies filled with wings, animals covering the land. And finally, in the most sacred and significant act of all, a man and a woman made in the image of God himself, breathing his breath, walking in his garden, alive in his world. It was very good. God had said so himself. And now the 7th day had arrived, and God rested. Now, before you move past that too quickly, stop. Because this might be the most surprising moment in the entire creation story. Think about everything we have witnessed across these 6 days. The power in God's voice, the speed of his creativity, stars placed across the sky in a single day, oceans filled with life at the sound of a single word, a human being formed from dust and made alive by a single breath. This is a God of infinite power, limitless energy, boundless creativity. So why did he rest? Not because he was tired. God does not grow weary. The Bible tells us that clearly. He who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. He rested because he was done. Because the work was complete, finished, perfect, nothing missing, nothing lacking, everything exactly as it was meant to be. And in resting, God was doing something that went far beyond simply stopping his work.
He was establishing something, a pattern, a rhythm, a gift. God blessed the 7th day. He set it apart, made it holy, declared it sacred, different from every other day of the week. Not a day for work, not a day for striving or building or achieving, but a day for rest, for stillness, for turning your attention away from what you are doing and back to the one who made you. We call it the Sabbath. And for thousands of years, across countless generations, across cultures and countries and centuries of human history, God's people have stopped on the seventh day. Not because they had nothing left to do. There is always something left to do. The work is never truly finished. The list is never completely empty. But because God Himself modeled something for us on that seventh day that our busy, driven, exhausted world desperately needs to hear. You were not made to work without ceasing. You were made to rest. Rest is not laziness. Rest is not weakness. Rest is not wasted time. Rest is obedience. It is trust. Trust that the world will not fall apart if you stop for a day. Trust that God holds it all even when your hands are still. Trust that you are more than what you produce, more than what you achieve, more than what you accomplish in a day. You are a human being, not a human doing. And God built rest into the very fabric of creation so that you would never forget that. And so, here we are.
In 7 days, 7 extraordinary, history-making, universe-shaping days. And I want you to take a moment before this episode ends. Just a moment. Look around you. The sky above your head, God made that on day 2. The ground beneath your feet, day 3. The sun warming the air around you, day 4. The birds you hear outside your window, day 5. The people you love sitting in the same room with you, day 6. None of it is an accident. Not one single part of the world you live in happened by chance. Not one sunrise, not one ocean wave, not one flower pushing up through the soil in spring, not one heartbeat. All of it designed, ordered, spoken into existence by a God who knew exactly what He was doing and exactly who He was doing it for. And that includes you. You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not a random collection of cells that stumbled into existence through billions of years of blind chance. You were thought of before the foundation of the world was laid, before the first word of creation was spoken, before the light pierced the darkness on day 1. You were already known, already loved, already planned. You were created on purpose, with purpose, by a God whose love for you is as vast and as deep and as endless as the universe He made with nothing but His voice. And that is the greatest story ever told. From nothing to everything, from darkness to light, from emptiness to life, from dust to you. That is Genesis chapter 1, and we have only just begun.
If this story moved you today, if it made you see the world a little differently, if it reminded you of just how known and loved and purposefully made you truly are, then do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, we bring these incredible Bible stories to life right here on Bible Adventures Animated. Stories of faith and courage and miracles and redemption. Stories that have stood for thousands of years and still have something powerful to say to every single one of us today. And if this episode blessed you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. A friend, a family member, someone going through a hard season who needs to be reminded that they are not an accident, that they were made on purpose, that they are deeply and completely loved. Leave a comment below and tell me which day of creation amazed you the most. I would genuinely love to know. And don't forget to like this video. It helps more people find these stories, and the world could use a few more people who know where they came from. Let's close with a prayer. Father God, thank you. Thank you for the light you spoke into the darkness. Thank you for the sky and the land and the seas. Thank you for the sun that warms us and the stars that remind us how vast you are. Thank you for the life you breathed into our lungs. And thank you for making us on purpose, for knowing us before we were formed, for loving us before we ever loved you back. Help us to rest in that love, to live from it, to share it with everyone around us. And help us never to forget that the same God who spoke the universe into existence knows our name. Amen.